Hello, in this video I'll be reviewing the worker details. So to navigate to the worker details, you'll go to Setup, Setup Workers, and then Worker Details. When you go to use this page, it would be assumed that you've already established your setup permissions, any compensation scales where applied, and the setup compensation methods. Also, you would want to have your services set up. All right, so let's go into worker details. So I'm going to go into an existing worker and we'll go from there. So this is if the worker is active. If this box is checked, they're able to log in and they appear on the calendar as available, and that's what that checkbox signifies. Then we have the worker's first name, middle name, and last name. The first name and last initial will be used most commonly, and in some cases the full first name and last name, but never the middle name. The primary email is the email that the worker would like their emails to be sent to for alerts and otherwise, and for if they forget their password. The start date is the date that they should start appearing on the calendar if they take appointments, or just the start date in general. Termination date, this will, if this date is populated, for example, if I populate this with September 30th, what will happen is as of September 30th, this worker would no longer be able to log in. They would be removed from the calendar from that day forward. So the termination date is what you would use when an employee will no longer be working with you. Okay, and there's a much larger video on how that works. But something tells me if you're watching this to set up a worker, you don't need to know how to terminate them quite yet. All right, so the time clock pin, when the worker clocks in or clocks out, they would need a pin. This information is not required. Anything required will have this little red dot next to it. So just keep that in mind. If your workers don't clock hours, there's no need for them to have a pin. And that's what the pin is used for. The username goes here. Traditionally, this is going to be your worker's email. So you can make that the same as their email. If you do have multiple locations, it would need to be unique. So you would need to make a different username for them. And then, of course, a password. Once you type in the password once, it'll ask you to enter it again. If you do not want them to log in, you would just not provide them a password. The display order would go here. So this is the order in which you would like that worker to display on the calendar or in drop-down lists. And then the worker photo would go here. You can upload the photo, or once you've uploaded a photo, you can remove it. By default, it will use the worker's first initial as their worker photo until you upload one. This multiple location user box, please contact support if you would like to use this. It requires additional information set up by our development team. Everything below this point is basically for reference. This is for HR reference details. This is not going to change anything on the software. It's more if you want to keep record of your worker's first name, last name, phone number, street, etc. So those are all reference fields. Same with case of emergency down here. That's also going to be a reference field. But where this is actually going to matter is this is an option to send an email for booked appointments or send an email for canceled appointments. If these boxes are checked, the worker would get notified using an email to let them know when an appointment was booked for them or an appointment was canceled in their column. And it's just as simple as checking that box. All right, the next tab over is for hours. So this is where you would populate the worker's hours. By default, those are going to be filled in, I believe. And you can tab across these fields, but if you are going to make any edits, the proper formatting is to put in the time, and don't forget to put in AM or PM afterwards. And then if you would like to copy hours from a different worker, you can select this drop down and say, okay, he's going to have the same hours as Shannon, and then it's going to populate Shannon's worker hours and online available hours. The worker scheduled hours are what is going to appear on the calendar to the staff, to all the workers, to the owner, etc. And the online available hours are the hours that would display as available for appointments through online booking. If somebody already had an appointment booked, it's not going to display that time as available. But as an example, if on Monday you changed it where your online availability wasn't until 11, The staff, maybe the front desk staff, would see that they can start booking you at 10, but when someone attempted to book an appointment online, they wouldn't show start times until 11 a.m. So you can tweak this. You can make it where certain days they cannot book online by leaving these blank. So by leaving it blank, it just assumes that you're off. There's also a checkbox down here. If you want your worker scheduled hours to mimic your online available hours, you just click this box and it will repeat those hours. Down here, you have an option to add custom hours. Custom hours cannot overlap each other, so just keep that in mind. And any of the company days off will reflect down here. Part of the company days off is saying that all of the workers will be off, and that will override any worker availability. So if some of the workers will be working, then technically that is not a company day off. You would want to leave that company day on and then schedule off the workers who will be off. So if somebody will be off for a day, you would just select the date that they'll be off. It will automatically assume one day, but you can do a date range and do multiple days. You can also repeat this weekly. Maybe they're going to work every other Saturday. So you would populate Saturday as one of the available hours, and then you would select, every 2 weeks on Saturday they'll be off. You can provide a note so that you have reference to it. And you would probably widen the date range up a little bit if you wanted that to carry on. So you have a few different options here on how this can benefit you in marking your worker availability. But these would be the complete days off, meaning they are not going to be available. And this would block them off for the next year and say they're not available on Saturdays every 2 weeks. Okay. In addition to that, we also offer what are called custom hours. So days off means that you're not there, you're not available. Custom hours means you need to tweak it a little bit, and maybe traditionally you're there from 10 to 5 on Mondays, but on this specific date, you're going to be there from 10 to 1. And you can adjust that, and again, you can do a weekly option or leave it as is, and also provide a note. And then you just go ahead and click save. Forgot the AM here. And it'll tell you when you miss something, but then that'll go down here. You can edit this once it's started happening, like this started happening in the past. So I can only tweak what's moving forward or end it and create a new item. Or if it hasn't happened yet, I can just flat out delete it and it will delete that record for me. Also, if you need to schedule things like lunches or just an occasional early leave, we recommend using the book out time for that. And that can be found on the appointment calendar. To define the services, you'll go to the services tab. And here is where you want to say how often to book these services. So booking services every so many minutes. So if your workers like to take appointments at the top of the hour, they would choose 60 minutes. Now keep in mind, if you only book every 60 minutes, you will want your appointments to be 60 or 120 or 180 minutes long, because then it will book them that way. So the company defines their interval setup. Their interval can be 15 minutes as far as the appointments are viewed, and that can be done in the setup appointments and emails. But this can be for the individual worker, and this will reflect in-store and online, but you'll want to make sure that that worker has service durations that are consistent with this setting. The select level, as we discuss in the setup service video, you can assign different levels, and you're able to say, okay, this worker is a level 2, and anytime you change the levels, you'll want to go ahead and hit the apply button, and it will carry through there, and it will tell you the updated amount. Down here is where you'll select which services this worker performs. If the worker does all of the hair color services, you would just select all. If they only do some, you'd select specific checkboxes. Or if you wanted to remove all these items, you can remove them by using this toggle for select all. If they do more than hair color services, you'll use this drop-down toggle where it's going in and out. And you can just click on this little arrow and expand it out and then select your options. If you do need to make adjustments, you can go into this little edit over here on the right, and you're able to say, okay, I know we typically charge $20 for this, but Michael actually charges $25. And even though most people can get this done in 30 minutes, he likes to take a little extra time. He takes 45 minutes. And then down here, you can also specify, let's say, the service fee. It's going to be a little different than everybody else's. It's actually going to be 15%. And then go ahead and click Save. And then you'll see the custom price, the adjusted price under the custom area here. Okay. And then last but not least is the Other tab. In the Other tab, this Allow Retail Sales checkbox. If you want this worker to appear when you sell a product in the dropdown, you'll want to make sure this box is checked. If they do not sell retail, there's no reason to check that box. Security permission, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, you would have wanted to already establish your permission setup. And in here is where you can delegate what permissions they're enabled for. If you don't want them to have any permissions, please leave this set to none. Their hourly wage would go here. So when you set up set up compensation methods, you would define that you would want to pay them their hourly rate times the number of hours worked. And this is where you would specify that hourly rate. Or if they make a salary, you can put the salary in here, and then that can also be referenced in the compensation methods. Down here is where you would define what their compensation method is. So for example, this worker has a service scale and retail scale. If this ever changed, maybe they do service plus retail commission, you can adjust that. And if you have a secondary compensation method, you can define that here. So an example of when a secondary compensation method is used is sometimes people will pay a service only payroll method and then monthly. So they would do the services maybe bi-weekly, like every other week, and then they would pay like a retail commission monthly or like as an alternative rate. The view only my appointments. This will allow this worker to only see their appointment book. They can schedule appointments for other workers using the Find an Appointment feature if that's permitted in their permissions, but it would only allow them to view their own book through the worker app as well as the appointment book. The view only my goals. In the goals area of the software, by default, it's going to show the company and all the workers' goals. If you would only like them to be able to see their own goals, you would check this box. Hide client contact info. This will hide any phone numbers or emails from all contacts or clients within the software. So the worker would not have access to contacting that client. And hide appointment book values. There are values on the appointment book delegating how much money came in that day, how much money was booked online, and so forth. If you would like to hide those values from this worker, you check this box. And then, of course, don't forget to click Save. Thank you for watching and have a great day.